Okay, let's make some music. I think I want to make something with a guitar, but I'm not entirely sure yet, so I guess we'll find out. I almost always use this like nylon guitar, so I might try something different. Maybe this. Let's change keys to F sharp minor for no reason. And then this might be like trappy, so I might keep it around where it's at. Maybe a little bit faster. Maybe we'll go like 151. And I think I'll do things kind of like, I don't want to say formulaic, but like in a way that I've done kind of before, just to save some time, because I know that it will produce some results that sound at least, at the very least decent. So, all right, so let's start with like one note at a time and just kind of get like a baseline, and then I'll kind of I'll add like little patterns as we go. So I'm going to start with like one note basically on the same note just constantly. So we're just going to do this. We'll go from there. So let's maybe add something below. Make it a little bit more interesting. So it doesn't sound bad there, but it sounds kind of cheesy. Okay, I'm trying to think of ways to make it kind of change subtly, because I don't know that I necessarily want this part of the pattern to change a lot, but maybe just a little bit. So maybe we can just do like little flavor notes. And then I don't remember the name of this note. Somebody please tell me in the comments. But there's a name for a note that plays just very briefly, kind of right before another note, and it like rolls up into it. That's often done on the piano. I don't actually know how often it's done on the guitar or not, but let's see how it sounds. So let's copy this over. And then maybe let's make it slightly different here. So I think that'll be kind of my theme, is just like copy what I already have and then just barely change it a little bit as I go. I want maybe this. So I just added one note there. And then over here, I just added this little note here. Basically just like a single note change is really all I did. So the structure of the chords never really changes. It's just like I said, just little like flavor notes that I've added every now and again, just to kind of spice things up a little bit. Actually, that's not a flavor, but you get the idea. So let's come up with like a bass line, literally. This E and B like combination sounds really like sad and somber. I really like the way that sounds. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They're 7 apart. So maybe that's like a pattern. Maybe 7 notes that are 7 apart just kind of have that feel. I'm not sure. Yeah. It's cool. Anyway. Okay, so to make this slightly more interesting, I'm going to take my bass notes and pitch them down an octave. And then I think I'll do the same thing with some of these notes. Maybe I'll do... I didn't really think about moving this little note with the note that I moved, but it kind of sounds cool even though they're not close to each other. Although maybe I do want to do this. Yeah, there we go, that's better. Okay, I'm going to EQ this now because there are some frequencies in here that I'm not a fan of. That right there is one of them. Okay, now I'm going to make it sound a bit more realistic. And I guess before I do that, let me save it. So okay, let's make it sound a little bit more realistic. So hit Control A, and if you're on Mac, I apologize. I do not know the shortcuts. But Control A highlights everything. Alt R pulls up the randomization menu, and then I just like to move the release a little bit, and then the velocity a little bit more, and then I'll leave everything else basically alone. Hit bipolar, hit accept. Let's strum. So Alt S. Okay, then you can mess with the strumming. If you make it really extreme, you can see what's happening. So it essentially just strums the notes, which means you're not playing them at the same time. You're kind of going ding 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 instead of grung all at the same time. But we don't want it this extreme. Hit accept, and then I'm going to randomize the timings. And FL, to my knowledge, doesn't really have a great way of doing that. So the way that I'm going to achieve that is like this: Control A, and then hit Alt Q, and it pulls up the quantizer. And what this does is it will quantize your notes to whatever grid you select. So if you have the default grid selected, it will quantize your notes to the default grid, and it'll make everything line up perfectly on the grid. However, if you select a grid that isn't normal, like I have here, see I've got the dotted eighth note grid selected, and you can select all kinds of them. There are all kinds of choices. I like the results I get from dotted eighth note. Now you're quantizing the notes to the dotted eighth note grid. Let me undo this and zoom in so we can see what's actually happening. So if you'll notice, everything's perfectly on the grid as it is now. But if I do the Alt Q, you'll notice things have kind of shifted, like left and right a little bit. So you'll see that like this note is a little bit further back, it's a little bit late. So are these. These are both late. This one's early. It was kind of pushed up a little bit. So you'll notice as I push and pull this knob up and down, it moves the notes to and fro, like on that grid versus the original grid. So if this is all the way on, all of the notes are now on the grid that I selected. So now if I hit accept right now, all these would be perfectly on the dotted eighth note grid. Whereas if it's off, nothing changes. It's like the notes were exactly the way they were to begin with. So what you can do is just kind of put it somewhere in between and hit accept, and you'll notice that some of the notes have been moved, some of them haven't, and some of them have been moved differently. So these two have been pushed like forwards this time, whereas these two have been moved backwards. And if you want to accentuate that, like make it seem a little bit more random and more realistic, you can kind of highlight some of the notes just kind of randomly. And the idea is doing it pretty randomly. That way it sounds like a person playing an instrument. And then just kind of move them back a little bit. Okay. And then you could do the same thing and like pull some of the notes forwards if you want. So you could do this. Pull that forward a little bit more. Okay, one last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take these low notes and pan them left to right. And I do this for a couple of reasons. The main reason is because it's just more interesting to listen to things that go left to right on occasion, as opposed to just everything being in the middle at all times. But the other reason why is because you'll notice that the notes that I'm moving happen to be on like the typical downbeats. So the 1, the 3, the 5, the 7, the 9, so on and so forth. And that's where I often put like kicks and 808s. So oftentimes a kick is on the 1, like on the very first beat. And then oftentimes there's also a kick on the 3 and the 5 and the 7 and so on and so forth. So if I have really low notes that are on those, I like to pan them side to side. The reasons, and one I just said was just because it's more interesting, but also because the idea is you're moving those low frequencies kind of to the sides and out of the way, so that later on when you put a kick or a bass that's in mono, it doesn't have as much like competing for that space, or at least that's the idea. So I went ahead and added a little bit of chorus, and I just went to the polychorus preset and just left it alone. This fruity chorus is pretty slept on. Like the default presets just make things sound cool a lot of the time. So, and the other thing I added was reverb, and I kind of mixed that out a little bit because I didn't want it to be too washy. So I could sing again. That's always fun. I might do that. if that was good or not. Guess we'll find out. Okay, it was bearable until the end there. I'm not really a fan of this like second part here. I don't think I did that very well. Okay, now I'm going to like wash it out with effects and stuff and hopefully make it sound really cool. Because right now it just sounds like somebody with autotune on their voice, which on its own isn't bad, but I think we can make it sound cooler. And have the volume kind of fade out as like at the beginning, and then it won't do that quite as much at the end, so it seems like it just gets busier as time goes on here and here. So, but then leave this normal. Okay, I'm going to separate the guitar because it has a little bit more low end in it. So for the purposes of this video, that's going to be about it. In the final beat, I might add more melodic pieces. I'm not sure yet. And I'll obviously add drums and mix and master and all that sort of thing. But for this video, that's going to be about it. Let's listen back.